Howdy, everybody. Back for another Friday afternoon. Well, yeah, it's afternoon. It's literally afternoon. Just afternoon, 4 minutes afternoon. We're here with Rob again on for a stunt guitar, but this one's actually more about kind of getting yourself ready to do stunt guitar stuff. Is that stretching out and, warming up more than stretching out. Just stretching, we've talked in previous episodes, like little things that you can do. Don't push too hard, but first you want to even warm up before you stretch. Most likely too. But that's what Rob's here to tell you about, not me. So, toss it over to you, buddy.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, stretching cold muscles is usually not like a great idea,
Yeah.
So you want to like.
Well, Rob's a runner too, so this is good. This is good to know because Rob's a runner. Me and Rob went to middle school and high school together. We've known each other for the majority of our lives now.
Yeah.
So I know he was a cross-country runner and still runs here and there, right?
Tries to.
Yeah.
I know I ran a marathon a couple years ago, and I want to do another one sometime. But
Oh, nice.
now I'm just kind of fat and out of shape, and that's just life. Sometimes.
Yeah, we go through levels of fitness in life.
Yeah, exactly. I've been focusing on my guitar fitness.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Way to bring it back.
Yeah, exactly. Guitar fitness, and that means not as skinny as I once was. Anyway, yeah. So you don't want to stretch like cold muscles. Like if you were a runner, you would jog around the track, maybe a couple laps. Just kind of get things limbered up. You're not running hard. You're going kind of slow and steady. Just kind of getting things warmed up, and then you stretch yourself out and get ready to get to work. And that's basically what we're going to be doing with these musical examples. After we get playing a little bit, then I'm going to stop and kind of talk about a couple different things that I sometimes do as far as like stretching goes. I know last time we talked a little bit actually from a John Petrucci video where he was talking about just kind of like rubbing his hands, like if you're on your way to a gig, even before you have your guitar in your hands, especially if it's like cold out, if it's winter, it's in the 20s, the 30s, whatever, you have cold hands, you go to play your guitar, it's going to be really challenging. So he talks about just kind of rubbing your fingers.
Oh, hand massage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of nice anyway.
Yeah, it is kind of nice anyway. Yeah, so, just something like that, if you can't play the guitar is a good thing. If you can't, have your guitar, just rubbing your fingers, that kind of thing will help get you started. I wouldn't do any like stretching necessarily yet because your hands aren't like warmed up. Remember we talked about before about, your wrist is a complicated thing and you want to be as careful with that as you possibly can to avoid injuries. So, all the absolute most that I would do beforehand is just kind of rubbing your hand, little hand massage. I know some people really like those like hand grip strength things.
Yeah.
I tend to kind of recommend my students to not do those kind of things because I just feel like I've always said, if you feel like your hands aren't strong enough to play the guitar, play more guitar, and then they'll get stronger.
Yeah. I used to use one of those grip master things, and it didn't improve my playing at all. Right? Like it makes my hands strong, but it's almost like work out for what you're actually going to be doing. Rather than just work out like, if I was going to be a marathon runner, I wouldn't do powerlifting, right? Like that wouldn't make sense. So it's kind of like why I don't think they hurt, but I don't think they help that much. Yeah.
And I think my concern with something like that is that like, let's say you're playing guitar for an hour or 2 hours, and then I don't know, I just feel like it's increasing your chance of injury because you're like constantly working those muscles. I don't know. I just think like I don't normally stay away from stuff like that and just play the guitar more if you feel like your hands aren't strong enough. Play more bar chords.
This might be, I don't know if this actually applies, but I know basketball players, when you play basketball, you're always supposed to lift first and then shoot right after you lift. So that way, like, you're still working on your, like, I don't know. Maybe if you're going to use one of those things, do it and then play guitar.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it and, I don't know. I have no scientific evidence to prove any of this, But we're here just throwing out claims. That's what we do.
Yeah, and I think like it's different when you're like exercising like a bicep or like your shoulders than it is your wrist. Like I just think that your wrist is this complicated thing. You've got all these tendons and all these ligaments and all these things that have to pass through this small bone in your wrist, and I just think like working out like that and then trying to now do something, you just I don't know, it just feels like you're risking something that isn't like a bicep or like if you're doing squats or something,
Right.
like
I mean, you're talking exactly versus like gross motor movements versus fine motor movements,
yeah.
right? When you're doing five motor, like you don't see anybody like in the gym like curling with one finger doing this, like. Oh, that'd be hilarious. We're gonna start. Actually, I'm gonna make that video. It's like gonna be like the guitar gym, and it's just people doing curls with one finger. Viral. We're going viral with something there. All right.
All right, so let's get into the first kind of musical example.
And the link is in the chat too. I'll post it again just in case anybody wants to look any of the tab and if it's not showing up in your chat yet, now it is.
So this is just a chromatic scale sequence. Chromatic scale is all of the notes basically in a row, and then we're just going to kind of hop around and move around in it a little bit. Playing a chromatic scale on the guitar is a little trickier than, well, on any instrument, it's actually a little tricky. It's a good thing to just kind of start to run through. Like if you're a trumpet player, make sure you know the fingerings for all your notes. On a guitar player or on guitar, it's like you're going to have to do some shifts and getting used to those shifts and trying to keep track of them. And then when you don't shift, because the guitar is tuned weird between your second and third strings, all that can be a little confusing. So I'll go through the basic sequence, then I'll talk a little bit about what I would do, kind of warm up wise. So we're basically going to play up 3 notes and then back 1 and then not up 3 notes, sorry, up 3 strings, back a string, and then up 3 and back.
Cool.
So that's like the first kind of part of the sequence, those 3 strings. And then you go back. And then we'll do another shift. And at that point, we've been starting on B. We're at B again.
Nice.
So that's like the whole sequence. If you've never played a chromatic scale before on the guitar, we're basically playing 4 notes in a row. And then from your 6th string to your 5th, you're going to shift back again, shift back again. Now, because the guitar is tuned weird, like I mentioned earlier, it's a major third between these strings. You're not going to shift, so it's going to be in the same fret. So B, C, C sharp, D, and then your D sharp note is right there. D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and then you have to shift again. G, G sharp, A sharp, and then that other shift to be, back at B. So what I would do first, if you've never played a chromatic scale, is first just play through the thing. And then start to apply the sequence. So that's like the you had to throw in the
yeah. I love the end. That's awesome, man. So I really like. I mean, that's a great sequence. I don't actually practice with like the full chromatic scale sequence, but what I like about that is that you actually are doing 12 notes, which is the chromatic scale, right? You're doing all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, and then kind of just changing your root, and then doing a 12-note chromatic scale from that root, right? And then it works its way through all of the root. Well, yeah, I guess it would almost, right? Until it gets back to 12. Maybe not all of them, but yes, most of them.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, a bunch of them. And it sounds very musical. still, which that you don't get from the chromatic scale a lot of the time. This, I feel like for some reason this sounds more musical than if you're just playing up and down your chromatic scale. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think remember any time you can use all 12 notes at any time in music. You're not limited. So a lot of times, if you just start to kind of picture between, like, let's say you're playing an A minor chord, if you picture between two chord tones, A and C, you can fill in the notes in the middle, and that's like, a early way to start to use some, chromaticism in your playing. If you're used to a good old pentatonic scale, you can, just something like that, where you're starting to fill in, you're still thinking kind of basic, just pentatonic, and you can start to use those notes as passing tones, to pass between notes that are in the key, and then, ones that are in the middle. And starting to use chromatics is definitely really cool. Remember that there's no, like, technically wrong notes if you use them in the quote unquote right way, which, is obviously subjective, but that's I think something fun to start to kind of play around with. So, since we're sort of blocking it out as 4 notes per string, that helps make it kind of manageable as you're going through it. So that's the basic sequence. Now, what I would do is I would first start with like a metronome. This might take like a hot minute, but that's okay. Can you hear the metronome clicking?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So right now I have it at like 110. That might be too fast already for you. This is like woodshed kind of stuff now at this point. This is like, you're going to be practicing, you're going to eat up hours. 3 hours can disappear in like in a second. So all you do is you start at whatever tempo seems slow and comfortable. Experiment, play on different pickups, because your guitar is going to respond differently on it's going to be brighter on the bridge, it's going to be warmer on the neck, all that kind of good stuff. Then just start to kind of speed it up a little bit. Oops. Helps if I listen to the click first. Go a little faster. And I kind of lost it there, sorry. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. And start to go a little faster. And we'll go a little faster again. 170 now. Starting to get a little bit better, and we'll try 180.
Yeah.
You probably want to like build it up slower than that. I was trying to jump around just to kind of speed it up like a little, and then it got a little sloppy in the middle there. Right. Sorry about that.
And notice, I just want to point out also there is that you're doing it 2 times each time at each speed, right? Like at least 2 times.
I would, experiment. I think this is one of like the hard things when you're really starting to like practice something technical. It's like there's not necessarily like a Yeah, maybe just 2 times each is cool. Maybe you have to do it 4 times each.
Right.
Maybe you start to speed it up and then it kind of crashes and falls apart like it kind of did on me. Maybe I should have slowed it back down, spent a little
Right.
more time at the slower speed, then tried to speed it up, or don't speed it up quite so fast. Like the way that I used to practice something like this is, you move the metronome in just like increments of 10. And then and kind of work your way up like that. But obviously we'd be here for like the whole hour with me just playing the same thing at that rate. So
Steve asked, build it up slower than that, meaning like over the next several years? No, like, I mean, if you consistently did this every day and worked on this every day and like keep a notebook. I actually used to use this program it was called like Guitar Speed Trainer or something like that. It was a very simple program on your desktop, and all it did was have warm-up exercises or different chromatic exercises, and then it did this pyramid of speed where you would start at 60 beats per minute, really slow, like something really slow. Like now Rob was just playing all 16th notes too, so that meant that was 4 notes every time it clicks, right? So 1 E into 2 E into 3 E into 4 E into, and 110 is probably, that's going to be a lot for most people to start at 110. You probably do want to take it down at like 60. And then it would take you up like 5 beats per minute at a time, 10 beats per minute at a time. But you'd play it 3 or 4 times through, and then it would just move up automatically for you. So you didn't have to adjust the metronome. It was a nice program. It was actually really cool. And then it would always get to a point where, like, they called it like the breaking point or something, where you're not able to do it really anymore. But you're still supposed to try doing it there, because that's how you're going to build the speed. It's kind of like, taking it back to powerlifting for some reason, is that you don't, like, sometimes you would just, like, do something you can't even lift, right? And have a spotter help you get there, because that's how you're going to get to be able to lift it, is push yourself past what you're going to do. And then Rob mentioned also, then bring the speed back down to a manageable level. It's like, for a couple reasons. You want to play it right at the end, but that's also, and then you also want to like leave your practice feeling positively about your practice. Not that like, oh, I failed and I flunked. Like, no, do it and end on a high note. High note, hey. Not in this one though, because it actually returns back descending, so you're going to end on a low note. But technically. So I hope that answers Steve. I pretty much used that program just while I was at Lockhaven University, which was less than a year, and I built up a lot of speed in that year. But I would, again, I just made it part of my day, back in the day when you were in college and you could just do that and schedule parts of my days. Like, yeah, I'm just going to practice guitar all day today. But nice. All right. I think we're ready for number 2.
Yeah, and just the other thing I would say is, like, I wouldn't get too hung up about, like, especially this first example. I know for me, like, when I was really trying to work on speed, there's a John Petrucci from that same video that I've been talking about, where he does like a nonsense pattern thing where you go across and then shift. And I used to do that like all the time to help develop speed. But the problem is I wouldn't recommend chasing non-musical exercises too much.
Right.
Then you're working on, like Jared was talking about, you're working on something that you're not necessarily going to even then use. It's the same sort of thing. It's like this, ultimately, really the whole point of the speed is to get your picking motion, like your tremolo picking, really like revved up as fast as you can go. That's like the purpose of this. And I changed it from like what Petrucci was doing with just the nonsense pattern straight across to make it a little more musical, so that we're at least using a chromatic scale, so we can start to use the, not just a guitar, technique thing for the sake of technique. It's still plugged into musicality in at least one way or another, and that's going to be kind of a theme throughout all of these. I don't like finger gymnastics all that much, because unless you're some crazy weird bebop jazz player, you're not going to be playing those shapes, so it doesn't make any sense to be working on them. Right. Focus on pentatonic sequences or major scale sequences, or something that is more musical than just like, I used to do those too, like, and like try to rev those up as fast as possible too. But like, what is the point? You're never going to do that in a song, so like, what are you even working on? You
No,
know?
that's a really good point. I used to actually when I was at Lockhaven, and this is probably why I stopped doing so much of those exercises all the time. Is that there was this incredible bass player, Sean Sean Herr. No, Sean Lacey. Oh, I can't remember his name, but anyway, incredible bass player there. And I would like hang out with him in jazz band and stuff like that, and would say like, "Hey, I'm working on these guitar things. I'm doing all this chromatic stuff." And he was like, "Why are you doing chromatic stuff?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's just like felt like something." And he was like, "You should be doing arpeggios. You should be doing like things that are musical." And like that's when I started actually breaking away from doing all of this chromatic. So remember, these are warm up exercises. Don't spend all of your time just doing these. These are just to get your hand ready. I think it's a really good point that Rob you just made with the right hand. The right hand's getting just as much of a warm up and workout as the left hand with this. So focusing on both and focusing on really making every note happen at the same time. The right and left hand playing together really well. That's an important part of aspect of this. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess we move on to number two. Number two and number three are going to be kind of related to each other. So this is it's like a chord scale is basically the idea here. So a chord scale is just when you go through all the chords in a row, and you know, so if we're in the key of D, it's going to be D major, you know, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, C sharp diminished, and then D. And then you just do it, you know, back down. So that's what a chord scale is. And again, you know, with the theme of trying to keep things plugged in, you know, kind of as musical as possible, we're working on our sweeping here, and we're trying to also then memorize all of the chords that are in the key of D major. I should have updated. I realize now I didn't update my tab to reflect the key of D. Should be two sharps, should be F sharp and C sharp in that key. So there's a whole bunch of accidentals in there in the music that really shouldn't be, but whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, as you're playing this, I want you to be thinking the arpeggio name that you're playing. So you're starting on D, and then E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, B, B minor, C sharp diminished, and then D. Because remember, if you're going to play a song in the key of D, you know, you got to at least know, like, you know, what are the usual suspects? Like, what are at the very least, your 1, 4, and 5 chord? Because using those arpeggios to color lines would be a good starting point. But also, you know, really, you should know all of them, and you should have them all memorized. Really, most of my students, especially like my students who are like, you know, taking their playing a little more seriously, it's like, let's explore up to 4 sharps and 4 flats. Like that's going to be most of your, especially in the guitar world, you're going to be living in that sharp side, G, D, A, E a lot. So you should know those. You should know them. You should know the arpeggios. You should, you know, you should know how to spell those scales, you know, like to the point where it's automatic and it's, you know, it's like that's the kind of like stuff you do in your first year in music college. You know, they make sure, you know, like at Berkeley when I showed up, I placed bottom of the barrel starting in everything, you know, harmony 1, ear training 1, blah 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 1, and it's, you know, making sure you don't have any gaps in your knowledge, you know, and at the very least that's like a good place to start. So, you know, we're combining concepts now. So we're still plugged into theory. We're still like keeping track of that. And then now we're going to start to, you know, focus on your sweep picking. And then the second part, you know, kind of, it's example 3, but you could think of it as like 2B, is using some alternate picking. So I'll get my metronome going. I'm at 70, which is pretty slow. We're doing 6-tuplets. And like Jared was saying, if 70's too, you know, I'm just starting where I'm starting, but then, you know, you start wherever's comfortable for you. You can double it and just do triplets as well. You know, you could like, so in other words, you could do like 140 and then feel them as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You know, you could do it that way if feeling them as 6-tuplets is too hard. And ideally what we want you to do in like a perfect world is just say the arpeggio as you're playing. So D, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, B minor, C sharp diminished, D, and then repeat D, C sharp diminished, B minor, A, sorry, G, F sharp minor, E minor, and D. And that'll, you know, I know for me, like, my friends used to always make fun of me because we'd be like jamming or hanging out. Like I could never talk and play guitar at the same time. You know, it's like my brain, you know, so if you're not used to that already, that's going to be a good kind of challenge. Yeah. And that might start to feel like a lot of thinking while you're playing, but like, you know, really the best improvisers and the best players in general, there's a lot of thinking going on while you're playing. It's not just the mechanics of like the sheer mechanics of playing the instrument. You know, you got to be thinking, you know, what chord is the bass player playing, or what root note is the bass player playing versus what extension is the keyboard playing? What should I be playing? You know, is the drums, are they getting louder? Are they getting quieter? Are they accenting something I'm not used to? Maybe I can complement that, you know? And all of those sort of things is, you know, the kind of stuff that you want to get used to doing. So just by starting to think arpeggio names as you're going, you know, that's a great starting point. You know, to kind of, you know, freeing your brain from just the mechanics of what you're doing. And then from there, all I would do is just start to speed it up. So now like at 80. And 90, usually I go groups of 5 with sextuplets because there's like kind of like a doubling effect compared to sixteenths, but for the sake of speed, now we'll do 90. And we'll go 100. Should listen to the click more before I start to play, then I won't be so long. And I'll try 110. That's probably usually about as quick as I can go. So that 110 sextuplets through those arpeggios is pretty quick.
That's something.
You know, some guys can go a lot quicker, you know, like
sure.
120, 130 or something like that. But for me, usually 110, 115, that's sort of a good sort of spot as well. And what I do is I have like a huge stack. Like this is all of my. This is like all of my stuff that I run through. Like if I'm going to get warmed up, you know. So what I do is I've got like little notes, you know, in like the top of each one that just says, you know, what the BPM was at, like that I was kind of around. You know, some days you'll discover like, oh man, I can play this one a little quicker. You know, and other days like, oh man, this stinks, it's sloppy and it's slow. And then really what I do now is I have a strict, like I'm only allowed to play something twice at the absolute most. And I usually go for like a middle tempo. So when I'm just getting warmed up, like I'm not trying to like, you know, play as fast as I can really. It's more about just like, you know, knocking the rust off, getting my brain going again. And it's like limit to just 2. Because what you end up doing, especially, you know, the whole point of a warm-up is that it's not supposed to be the meat of what we're working on. It's supposed to be 20 minutes, half an hour, absolute most. And then now it's time to really get busy. So are we working on improvisation? Are we learning a song? Are we writing a song? Are we practicing one of our songs? You know, whatever it might be. So I don't micromanage anymore. It's like, I play it twice. If it's sloppy, I slow it down a little, do it one more, or, I'll play it once. If it's sloppy and that's too fast, then I'll slow it down and then I move on. That way you can cover a lot of material.
Yeah.
One of the most important things I think I learned, it was towards like the end of my time in college. It was a clinic. I don't remember who it was now, but they were talking about how when you practice, it's easy to start to think like, oh, well, I'm going to practice 5 hours on Friday, and then that's going to get me ready. Like you can only accomplish so much when you sit down to practice. Mm-hmm. So think of it in little bite-sized chunks. It's like, I'm going to spread out those 5 hours across the next 5 days, and I'm going to give myself just a couple chances to play each thing, and then I move on. That way you're not like micromanaging, obsessing with one lick, because that's just one lick out of all of the things that we need to play. So like just keep going. It's fine. Tomorrow maybe you'll play it better. The day after that maybe you'll play it better. And then after you've been doing that for like a month, and if you realize like, hey, this lick is still super sloppy, then it's time to like sit down, let's take a look at it, really analyze your motion, what are your mechanics, and then try to, diagnose what the problem is. But you don't want to get so hung up. I used to do that all the time of just like, I got to practice this one thing till it's perfect. But there's 500 things you need to play,
Yeah,
right. So don't get so obsessed with the one thing, the one run, the one, whatever it might be.
Fantastic advice. Another thing that Rob just really touched on, like getting analytical. You want to start all of these being analytical, right? You want to start by, don't get your metronome out the first time you play these. The first time you're playing these, you're just learning patterns. Don't, like the first couple times you probably pull this out, don't even worry about getting the metronome out. Your fingers need to get used to this. Your fingers and hands and your brain need to get used to all of these patterns. Even that first pattern, the 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern, your fingers need to get used to doing that, especially for like younger guitar players that aren't using their pinky much. They always go like, wait, now you're making me use my pinky all the time? Like, yeah, bro, you're going to have to use your pinky. Like, it's there. It's right there. Yeah, it's playing from behind, but it's still there to help out. Yeah, I think that's so take your time, learn the patterns first. And you also notice, like, when you're doing that 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what's great about that is like you are warming up all 4 of your fingers. Now, some of these other exercises, if you notice Rob's playing, the pinky might not be getting used as much as some of these other fingers, but it's warmed up and ready to go for, we don't use the pinky as much as the other fingers. It's just, it is fighting from behind, but we need it. We need it. I'm not cutting my pinky off anytime soon. So, yeah, just keep it slow. It's kind of funny because your pinky is your strongest finger. Really? Is that the truth? That it is the... That's interesting, Jude. Jude's making claims now, too. We don't know. We have no scientific fact either. I mean, I'm going to need to see a source for that, Jude.
You need to go take it up with Brad Paisley, man. Yeah, I don't know.
I love that we have an inside joke for all of these two. All right.
Something to say about that. Yeah, and I've been kind of skipping the basic mechanics of this, but I guess we could back up for like just 2 seconds. So with the first one, it was just strict alternate picking: down up, 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 down up. When you pick even numbers of notes on each string, when you go to do your string change, your pick attack is the same that you started with. Is like a little rule. In other words, if you started with a down and then you played even, when you go to change, it's still with a down. That's what makes even numbers easier. That's what makes like that chromatic exercise in general easier. If you're doing groups of 3, that's where things get weird because now you got down, up, 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 down, up. Now, if you're doing just like a nonsense pattern, that's easy enough. But if you start to do something more complicated, more interesting, some sort of a sequence or, it's going to get real complicated real fast with the picking. So, for that one, we're just looking to fire away as quick as you can, just across your strings. And even something like that can be a good exercise just to get started. We're not even worried about notes. We're just worried about picking accuracy, trying to hit the strings as clean as possible. For the second one, that's the sweeping thing. So, from our kind of like our sweeping clinic that we did,
Right.
it's up, up, down, 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 up, up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, down, down. So we only really have, that's our sweep for the most part of it. It's at the very end that we finally get like a bigger sweep backwards. Ups tend to feel not as comfortable, so you want to be, real patient with that. And yeah, like really, like Jared was saying, don't even do the metronome. Just start like slow. Just kind of program them in. You want to learn where the arpeggios are, obviously. Like I was saying earlier, if you can do the names, that would be super cool too, because then that way we're, tying everything together in like a theory kind of way. And then, once you're feeling pretty good about it, then get the metronome out real slow and just start to like, program it. You can start, very, very slow. Something like that. Yeah. For most people, me especially when I first started working on sweeping, I had a tendency to get like a, so it's sort of lopsided. You're doing this faster than you're doing the other notes. So remember that they're all triplets. They're all the same rhythmic value. So you want to try to make sure that pull off isn't rushing the rest of them.
Right.
Or, think like 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3. Oops, I played the wrong note. 1 triplet, 2 triplet. Oh my God. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And then from there start to kind of gradually speed it up. So that was like triplets at 60. We want sextuplets, so. So obviously, even to start at 60, you've got to have the pattern pretty smooth. So, kind of because this is a clinic, I'm sort of skipping a little bit of stuff, just like, and if you were, in private lesson with me or, if you're working on something, you're having trouble, remember with all these, it's all the same rhythm, so you want to keep your, look out for those pull-offs. Those tend to be the ones that get a little rushed. All right, I guess move on to number 3.
Yeah, or 4? Are we 3 or 4?
My thing says 3. So we got sweeping again, but with some single notes added. So now we're trying to get your alternate picking going in there. This is a big thing that I spend a lot of time working on as well. I have a whole bunch of exercises that combine techniques. If you're going to use sweeping and you're going to use alternate picking and you're going to use legato, that's cool, but we got to work on combining all of those,
right.
And smoothly and seamlessly transitioning between the different techniques. Because if you can't do that, then it's kind of useless. You can't use it in a musical way. So all of the notes that we're adding are going to be diatonic. Again, they're going to be from the key of D. So you're going to be looking out for F sharps and C sharps. And, the picking is written in there. So again, I'll start, around 60. That's probably a good, starting speed of sextuplets. So we're... So the hard part about this, thanks, man. The hard part about the alternate picking, here, I'll shut that metronome up, is that the alternate picking is going to be starting with an up when we get there. And that might feel real uncomfortable. For me and for most people, normally a down is like the kind of pick stroke that feels more comfortable. So the up might be a little weird. So, with our picking here, we're up. Well, I start everything with a down, but, I'm going down. And then once I get in, up, down, down. But whatever. You can do it however you want to start it. But up, down, down, down. So that's our arpeggio. And then the notes that we're playing is 3, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 takes up basically 3 beats worth, which is a little weird in full 4, but whatever. It's just a warm up. So that transition is the hard part. We're trying to use, what is pretty quick alternate picking. 6-tuplets, our goal here again is like around 110, 120, something like that. 120 really fast. I don't think I can play that. Anywhere around 90, 100, 110. That's cool. That's like, shred guitar kind of territory. That's where 6-tuplets sound pretty sweet. So, that sort of alternate picking, just on its own is pretty quick. This is 100. So that's like our goal tempo. That's going to be pretty challenging to get in and out of. So 100 is quick, like I said, 110, that's like, kind of the fastest that I can go kind of cleanly. Maybe 115 on like a good day. Hopefully I'm trying to practice more and get all this sort of stuff a little quicker, because it is, with the kind of music that I play, this is like a musical application of arpeggios. Like I love, this is like your cliched kind of metal guitar player solo where it's like, the band is playing whatever chords, and then you just match those chords and you just do, sweepy things above it.
Yeah.
And that's cool,
Yeah. I like that little ending part to each of those. It makes it sound like very like Mozart, or like it's got a very like classical style, like this melodic classic, which it is. I mean, that's what we're doing, is playing through little chord runs that are used a lot. I mean, this is how you would classically train on piano too, is doing these arpeggios. So makes sense.
Yeah, and usually, you'll hear those kind of quick arpeggios played on like a piano, not necessarily like on a guitar. That's one of the things that makes sweep picking so cool. I like to use sweep picking like a weapon. It's like it's a thing. I want to execute like a flurry of notes, something that's gonna like, I don't know, either turn people's heads or make them throw beer bottles at you. I don't know. It's one or the other. We got made fun of at a gig up in Boston by the DJ once, because we were just the band with the sweepy guitar players, and I'm like, well, whatever, man. I mean, you're gonna make fun of me over the mic about how we play the guitar, but you're a DJ.
So by the DJ, right? That's
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
The guy over there with the glorified iPad.
I'll take that with a grain of salt. Unless
he's not even like a good DJ. He wasn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if he's like a vinyl DJs that really do scratch, like there's an art to that, and there's like but if you're like a Serato DJ that's just putting on a playlist, or it's all like, you've got a hardware controller that's really doing most of the work for you, then no thanks. Thanks, buddy.
I've played enough, especially cover band gigs, to see like good DJs, and I get like what a good DJ can do. Even with everything's electronic in like major clubs now at this point anyway. Like a good DJ, they can blend, do cool things. This guy wasn't doing that. This guy was playing the same songs every night. You're a DJ. You can play any song. Like anyway, So all these sort of techniques, I think sweeping and tapping and all like the shreddy stuff, it fell out of vogue for like a long time. It was, really, poo-pooed upon, especially with like grunge rock swept in. and it's cool to be bad at your guitar. It's kind of like the way it came across to me, and like,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, that's lame to me, but that's like the interesting thing about art in general, is that it's not like, it's one thing is really cool to one person is just terrible to the next. It's not necessarily either or,
Yeah.
like, it's just, you're making an artistic statement. So,
Exactly.
yeah, and these kind of like the more you can extend the sweeps across more strings, like we're starting easier here with just three note or three string arpeggios, and those are super cool. But when you start to expand this across the other strings, this can be really, really cool, especially on a 7-string guitar. There's a whole bunch of arpeggios that I like to do that like you can't do on a 6-string because of that, now that new.
Yeah.
All sorts of really cool big arpeggios on like an extended range guitar. 7 strings actually makes a lot of sense for those sort of sequences, oddly enough, that you can't do on a 6-string, which I wanted to teach that kind of stuff, but I don't think anybody here has a 7, so you can't do it. So that's that. So usually, again, for me, this is like, I've got my median tempo. Once you get the fingers down, write little notes, print it out or whatever you got to do. Write little notes to keep track of what tempo you're at. Find like a median speed that's good for you, and then just start to play them just twice, maybe 3 times each, and then move on. The idea here again is just to get warmed up. Okay, here's the technique. Here's the basic thing that we're working on with sweeping or alternate picking, and then just move on. Because we want to get to the meat of what really making art is, or playing music is. So for number 4, we're back in hybrid picking, kind of hybrid legato picking kind of world of things. This is a Rick Graham sequence, that UK guitar player guy. And this one's like really cool. I like the way this one like wiggles through through a G major scale. Again, the hybrid pick notes are in parentheses, so those are the notes that I'm grabbing with my middle finger. So it's mostly, this will be like all down picks with your pick, and then, the parentheses notes are where we're grabbing them with our finger. I'll start slow. So it's through 2 positions in G major. It's like a G major scale on the way up, and then you could think of it as like a Dorian on the way down if we want to try to plug in more, theory stuff as we're going. So Dorian is the 2nd mode of a major scale. If you don't know your modes, then that's another thing that I would highly recommend working on here. Usually what I do with a sequence like this is I blasted through all 7 modes real quick, all the way up the neck, and then sometimes I'll even play through them again. Without the legato, I'll just do them with just everything alternate picked, which would look like this. And then what I would do normally is just keep going. So then the next one would be Phrygian, then Lydian, mixed Lydian, Aeolian or natural minor, and then Locrian, the one that nobody uses, is number 7. So, those would be your 7 modes. So, again, trying to think musically as much as possible, exploring. It's a little bit like musical busy work kind of in a way, but we want to be like exploring the neck and starting to be able to visualize and see them. For the longest time, I would do everything just in G when I was practicing, in college especially. That was really stupid. Play different scales, play in different keys, play through harmonic minor, play through melodic minor, play through whole tone, play through diminished, half whole half, whatever it is. Once you get a sequence going on, that's like the tip of the iceberg of the amount of, again, it's like exploring or musical busy work, depends on how you want to look at it. But, want to really start to unlock the neck, because if you're going to be improvising or playing over some changes or trying to cut like a cool solo, you're going to want to, be able to know your way around pretty quickly. So 60 was a good kind of starting speed. And up to 70. That was bad. One more. That was better on the second one than 90. $100. And we'll do 110. And we'll try 120. How well it'll go. That's probably too fast. That's a little too fast.
I love seeing you try to catch up to it too, like the. Oh, that's the best.
I had it. It's a little too fast. So then what I would do, that's a little too fast. Then I would do is just try to run through all of them, and hopefully it won't be a mess. So not too bad. My muting is getting
Yeah, dude.
a little weird.
I
Yeah.
love seeing you try and catch up to it the one time, just to see your determination too, like, right? So and it's also great to see Rob does make mistakes here and there, right? We're all gonna make mistakes. And another thing I think to really think about too is Rob gave you a great starting point on all of this. There's a lot. I mean, this is more than a great starting point. This will keep you busy for a while, but also just come up with some different exercises on your own, especially when you're first starting out. Like I find, hold on, I'll actually grab a guitar once. I find even just when you're first starting out, doing some single string kind of stuff, where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just mess with the order of those notes, like 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3. Like even just doing that is gonna get your fingers used to scale shapes. Which again, these are kind of more advanced moves, but doesn't mean that you can't do it when you're young, when you're first starting out. Just take them as little small sections rather than. I know when you look at these tabs sometimes, especially Rob's tabs, they look scary when you first look at them, right? They just because there's a lot of notes happening in a short period of time, but it doesn't. That's just notation. It's the easiest way to get across what you're trying to teach. That's what it's for. But if you take it one note at a time, always take things one note at a time at first.
Or like a good idea is to just print them out, get a pen, with this sequence, just figure out what the sequence is and then just like ghost in the breaks, between the different, that way it'll be easier to see, where the sequence is beginning and ending. When I'm learning someone else's stuff, that's something that I like to do. It's just like, especially something like this. It's a sequence. It's the same thing over and over again. Now you're going to have to do some problem solving when you get around the second and third strings. Those are the ones that are going to be a pain in the neck. So usually the way that I'll play this sequence, first it's, that's our sequence. So it's a down, pluck, or pluck is the hybrid. And then it just starts over again. Now here's where it gets weird because you got to shift. There we go, that's better. So like that right there is the tricky spot. I'm doing it wrong. It's like your fingers are gonna have to cross like that. So just remember, like, especially when you go to like play them in the other ones, like Phrygian is the one mode that's like a little funky. There's all sorts of kind of weird stuff going on there even before you get to the second and third string break or change. Now, there's more than one way you could probably finger it, but for me, like usually, like if we go back to the one that's in this example, I'm going to shift up like index finger and then ring finger and then use a roll. So a roll is just when your finger flops over. And that's the hard spot because a roll it's a little harder to keep that sounding clean than you know, a sequence like that when you have different fingers for each string. It is possible to play it clean, you know, just as clean. It takes a little more effort, and you got to really know what's going on there. So like there, you could use your ring finger and then go like that. I tend to use my pinky because then I'm like already kind of thinking in there. So there are a couple different ways you could do it in that spot. Like that would work. Now you're not going to want to go middle finger there because then getting down to the sequence that's not really going to work. And then usually what I'll do is I'm kind of thinking of it as it's like a major third stretch in each position, whether I'm playing a minor third or a major third. Not always. Sometimes I'll do it a little different. It depends on the context. Like in another position, like in the Phrygian one, I will do it there, and then I'll switch when I get a chance. So you're going to have to do, like I said, some problem solving. You're going to have to kind of experiment, figure out what seems to work best for you. Maybe when you get it up to speed, you realize that isn't really working, then you got to change it, then you got to do it again, you know, and then rework all of the start from scratch. So that's like part of what makes playing an instrument hard, especially when you're dealing with technical stuff, because what might come naturally for you might not be the way that you actually want to do it. You might have to force yourself to do something that doesn't feel natural. For me, I like radically changed my picking technique when I was in college. I used to pick like just from my elbow, then discovered that wasn't giving me enough speed or accuracy at slower tempos, as oddly as that sounds. Like playing around 120, 130, which most songs are, I could not do. And then now that's done. So then had to totally, you know, like I had a mirror and I would like, you know, focus and make sure I was picking in the new way and like, cause you can't really see yourself. So that was like my solution. You know, so I still have that little mirror actually, oddly enough. Every once in a while I will like break it out just to see, just to check in. But, you know, again, try to think musically, you know, like just because one way of doing something gives you the most amount of speed doesn't matter if most songs are at a different tempo. You know, if you can't play at 120, 130, and this is like a typical shred guitar player thing too. It's like they can play blazingly fast, like reckless tempos, you know, 16ths at, I don't know, 210 or something.
Yeah.
But then if you slow things down and it's just like rhythmically a mess, you know? So, you know, remember that like, especially with the shred guitar stuff or the you know, kind of those faster techniques, if you can't play this stuff slow around 120, 110, or, you know, like in real world, you know, then it's useless. It's useless to you. So you know, don't work on anything that's a waste of your time. You know, technique is cool, but music isn't like a sport. You know, we're not like, you know, you don't get a record deal because you can play at 240. You know, like that's not the way it works. You know. So anyway, Dragon Force has entered the chat. Dragon Force is cool. I got all the respect for those guys. That stuff is crazy. Yeah. Nuts. He's crazy good.
Dude, you just dropped the best comments in here, Jude. Just gotta be. All right, man. That was awesome. That was great. I think I kind of we were gonna jump into doing Rob's 50-cent licks thing, but I kind of forced Rob to do a little bit of this warm-up exercises because I feel like it's really just important. It works for all of this stuff. So I think next week we're gonna start with the 50-cent licks. We're gonna keep doing these with Rob on Friday. I think it's great value stuff that we can just. Evergreen content, as they call it, too. we can rinse and reuse this stuff later on. Or
And actually, just real quick before we end, sorry,
yeah.
there's one stretch that you can do that is pretty cool that one of my like teachers in college showed me. I don't even know if you can.
Okay.
And basically, it's like you put your wrists on like a table, and you use the table to help you kind of stretch it out. I don't even know if you can even see my hand right now.
I can see it. I got what you're saying. And then you straighten your elbows.
Yeah, and you just like that one works really well. I think that works better.
Here, I could show it on my end too.
There you go.
Let me know if this looks better. Looks like he's putting his fingers and then straighten the elbows, right? And now I'm not pushing too hard to straighten. I'm not pushing anything. It's not me going further extension, right? Yeah. Because we don't need to overextend, especially this direction. I don't know any time my guitar playing has ever needed me to go too far this way. Everything's actually going this way. So what we're doing is stretching it so it doesn't tighten up when we come the other direction, right? So it's compensating, really.
That stretch is a good one. Like I would recommend that more than like pulling on your wrist, really, because you can pull way too hard and you don't like it. You just don't.
Yeah, there's some
the one I would recommend.
There's some drumming ones that I've done that, like, sometimes I'm like, dude, I'm going to injure myself by doing this. And that doesn't make any sense. Like, do not injure yourself stretching. That's but yeah, that was great. Thanks, Rob. Now you're all warmed up to practice all afternoon in the rain, too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
There we go. Perfect. Anybody got any questions or anything for Rob? I think we answered everything pretty much, but... if you do have anything, you know how to reach us. I think I'm gonna be, I'll be playing around in the rain today too, I guess. Actually, I think I might go set up. I just got the new gear from Sweetwater to set up the PA, so I think I'm gonna head over there and plug some stuff in and play music really loud.
Yeah, I like it, man. Yeah. I've been working on remixing and mixing new music, so I'll probably be doing that for a little bit, and then time to get practicing.
I got yep, exactly. Yeah, Jude, yes, you got the candy. I got the candy from Sweetwater. I actually have like a bowl of candy just as my Sweetwater candy in my house that like I just, every time I order stuff, I put candy into it and then very rarely eat. Because, who's eating atomic fireballs, bro? Like, take that out of here. I mean, I love the Laffy Taffies, though. Don't get me wrong. I'll take the Laffy Taffies, the Tootsie Rolls. What else? Oh, the honey. What are the honey ones? Do you know those honey ones? Oh, they're so good. You very rarely, every 3 orders, you'll get a honey one.
You buy too much equipment, then, man.
Yeah, I know. It's a thing. Well, we've moved a lot into new spots, and I needed to buy stuff for the new spots, and yes,
I'm guilty of that. Like, even more so. So yeah,
I put myself on like a gear hold for like a year or two, where I was like, no buying gear. I'm not in that hold anymore, though. We're back in gas territory, gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh, dude, I got a new Strandberg in like just the other day, so I'm right there with it. Yeah.
Well, quarantine doesn't help.
Yeah, no.
You're sitting around and all of the online shopping is still available and it just gets mailed to me. Yeah, I'm going to take advantage of that. Yeah. All right, dudes. Peace out. Have a great weekend. Oh, yeah. Woo! Peace or devil.
Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.